What is good? Osiris here, stuck in the middle. I do an upload every day. Thank you for joining. YouTuber Vosh, was on with Charlie Kirk yesterday on Tim Pool's Timcast IRL YouTube channel. It was a great conversation. The topic of reparations came up. The most important part of having any type of conversation is to make sure we're using the same words, we have the same meaning for the vocabulary. Otherwise, we'll be talking through each other. Tim Pool did a good job here because he wanted to pin down to Vosh, what is your definition of reparations?
Specifically on reparations, what do you view reparations as, more importantly?
So this is a big divide. Some people think like cash payments. I'm not a big fan of that. It doesn't fix the problem, for one. It's if you can put money into that community, but there's been research done on how long a dollar stays in a black neighborhood as opposed to a white neighborhood. And if a black neighborhood, all of the businesses are owned by, corporate boards that are all majority white, eventually the money filters out and you get a very temporary boost in living situation, not much long-term structural change. I'm a big fan of structural reparations, not based on race, but rather based on targeting neighborhoods that need it the most. Some of these neighborhoods are like white, I passed through some of them on my way out from Ronald Reagan Airport. I can tell which parts of this country. You can see it in the bones of the neighborhood.
Yes, you heard that correctly. He's defining reparations not even based on race. He included white people in reparations.
Rather based on targeting neighborhoods that need it the most. Some of these neighborhoods are like white, some of these neighborhoods are like white, some of these neighborhoods are like white,
Vosh, Charlie Kirk was asking about reparations in regards to slavery. So we have to clear this up. We can't even talk about it. Obviously, you can't even do it on the color of skin. I have brown skin. You would call me a black American, but my lineage is through the British colony of Jamaica, slavery through Jamaica and England. So I shouldn't even be eligible for reparations in America. So you can't even do it on race. Vosh is afraid to say no. He is clearly not for reparations to descendants of slaves. He said it right here in the conversation.
Applying reparations along racial lines runs into a bunch of really tough issues. Which neighborhoods? Do you go by like blood? Like, can you prove your great-great-grandfather was a slave? It gets very difficult very quickly. Maybe that would be the most direct interpretation of generational reparations, but...
So clearly, he said because of the logistics, basically, it's not feasible to do it. So the answer is no, Vosh. You're not for reparations for descendants of slavery. But what he's saying is, since that's not feasible and morally reparations should have happened, here's what we can do. Call that something else. Don't call that reparations. Close the door on reparations and say why, and then make your case for what this is, this new thing is, this thing that's feasible. In my opinion, reparations are obviously morally the right thing to do. Japanese Americans got reparations for being put in unconstitutionally in internment camps. Native Americans have had reparations. Damn it, even slave owners, some slave owners got reparations. So there's really no argument to say that back then, literally the slaves who were freed, the right thing to do would have been to do some type of reparations. Some people call the Civil War the reparations. Okay, if you want to factor that in, but something to help former slaves get on their feet. After you're freed from slavery, what are you going to do with no land, no nothing? So the moral argument is there. But if it's not feasible, you have to make that case. Vosh referred to reparations as a debt owed.
Okay, make the argument.
It's just an owed debt. We said 40 acres and a mule. We never paid it.
And I have a problem with that. Many people use this term debt owed. It's owed. Reparations are owed to people. Reparations, as I just discussed, obviously should have been paid. However, acting like they are owed is asinine. The world is ugly. Nature is beautiful and nature is ugly. Animals are beautiful, they're graceful, and they're savage as well. Slavery was one of those examples of savage times across the world. There was no agreement going into slavery that once this whole thing is over, we'll make sure you're taken care of. Was that the right thing to do? Obviously not. Slavery itself wasn't the right thing to do. But we have to have honest conversations. Where this is coming from, there's a bill called HR 40, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talk about 40 acres and a mule. It was named after Special Field Orders number 15 that was agreed upon based on a discussion with about 20 black leaders in the South and General William T. Sherman. They worked out that we would say, hey, after slavery, you all get 40 acres and a mule. Well, the mule came later. He's actually said he would loan the mule, because what good is land if you don't get a tractor and you don't have any money to buy a tractor? What are you going to do with the land? That's why the mule came later. And then on top of that, in the documents, it was no white people were even allowed on those, in that property. That land was going to be governed completely by former slaves, black people. So that order was drawn up. Abraham Lincoln, president at the time, was all good with it. They actually started moving in on the land and cultivating it and starting families and starting a new life. Abraham Lincoln got assassinated. His vice president, Andrew Johnson, became president, and he was cool with the Southern slave owners. So he wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. He ripped it up, said, nope, we're not doing it. That's still not owed. Is it right? No. And the big problem I have with owed is, because obviously if William Sherman had the power, then it would have happened even with Andrew Johnson as president. It's not, because the commander-in-chief changed. So it wasn't right. It was expected that this was going to happen. It was terrible, but it's not owed. And my real problem with the word owed is that people who are for reparations right now, they use that term owed so they don't have to make the case, so they don't have to convince people.
So how about reparations for slavery?
I think I'm pretty in favor of that, yeah.
Okay,
It's
make the argument.
just an owed debt.
Go talk to someone who's for reparations and talk to them about, hey, right now when you do the polling on reparations, it doesn't poll well. Some polls you'll see as high as 2/3 of the country are not for it. How do you convince people? They will be offended by that. Life isn't fair. You would hope that it was paid at the time so we wouldn't have the discussion now, but that didn't happen. You can't talk out of one side of your mouth, say something is owed, and then on the other side of your mouth, you become a useful idiot for the Democrat Party. And I'm talking about black Americans. I'm talking about people who are for reparations. The people who are for reparations that told you to vote for Biden. You can't be a puppet to either of these parties. You can't have someone pay on something without any power. The power that you would have is convincing people. And black Americans don't know how to play this game of politics. They get wrapped up into this divisive nature, demonizing half the country and now accepting critical race theory. And you think the country is going to be okay with reparations? You have to convince people. That's how it works. I know we're trying to get things through on an authoritative level, so Democrats have the power to do everything. Do you think if Democrats had the power in the House, the Senate, and the President, which they do have now, but say that they had even more margin for error in the Senate, do you really think reparations would happen? Stop it. I'm going to end with this. It's a moral discussion, and you have to make the case for it. And if you are for reparations, you hear people use the hashtag cut the check.
Today's topic, if you will, as you're probably seeing this across, is pretty much cut the check. Why America has such a hard time paying why Americans have such a hard time just paying us, the ancestors of slavery, the descendants of slaves. Why does America have such a hard time cutting the check to black people?
And there's people who use that who I respect and like. We just respectfully disagree with that. That sounds good on social media. It sounds good on YouTube, but it's not going to get you anything. And not having reparations and all the different things that have held people back, nobody owes you anything. If you're walking through life thinking that people owe you something, then you need to reevaluate. Take care.
Fuck you know about struggle, the boy in the plastic bubble. When I drink away the pain I guzzle, my life is like a complicated mathematical puzzle. For real, seen death twice, it's an ugly motherfucker, man. But you conversate with it when you suffering. Let go of the pain, you'll never rock the mic again. Your choice, love to the rate of 20 Vicodin. I kinda likened it to ortho tricycling, disturbing the natural cycles of life and it's trifling. Fuck what you heard, less money, more problems. 4 years removed from the game with no album. I put the gun in my brain, but first I wrote a note to explain. Put the Luga in my head, and these are the words that I said. Sure as kingdoms rise, and kingdoms will surely fall, and wash away the memories if they weren't there at all. Like broken lambs, the trees, the stars, the leaves, the winter's wind. Spring will come again. When your cerebral ceases to administer solace, and the only faith you have left is a CD from a singer who had a son with Christopher Wallace. Tomorrow is never, hope is abolished. Mind and soul have little to no unity. Life threw a brick through my window of opportunity. My immune system lacked diplomatic immunity. When asthma attacks the black community, where do you go from there? Long walk, short pier. Thought I knew all it was to know of the ledge, till I glanced down at all 10 toes on the ledge. Before I heard what sounded to me like a pledge, emerged from the darkness, and this is what it said. Do not despair, breathe, fight, for there is more life to live, believe. More insight to share, retrieve, must dare to be illustrious. Exhale, hold, inhale, receive, and live. Sure as kingdoms rise and kingdoms